Okay, we got ourselves organized for a third time here.
All right, full screens.
Four
Do I
screens.
mess up the settings again?
Everybody's looking better. We're starting to get ourselves, just takes hours, few hours, and we get there.
Yeah, I'm going to spend $1,000 on a microphone like Jeff did for the next one.
That does look very professional with it.
Yeah,
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to move some workout equipment in the background of mine, just like Raghu did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guarantee you I use this mic more than he uses that workout equipment.
Absolutely.
That's why it's in the carriage house, yes. You pegged that one.
All right, so today we're going to dive into Engauge, which is, I guess, chapter 2 for us. But I thought we would just take a small step back and bring us to, I guess it would be maybe third quarter of 07. We sold in March of 08. Third quarter of 07 was right when we had 2 competing offers to buy our company, right? Raghu, take us from there.
Yeah, real quick, basically in the third quarter, in reality, I think we got 6 offers, but like very quickly it, after some back and forths, there was a clear top two that went back round to round. And we got to meet further and further discussions with both of the firms. And now that many years have passed, I don't know if there's any point in that NDA from 13 years ago or something like that. But the 2 firms were obviously Engauge, which was a brand new firm essentially, with a couple of divisions. We'll go into that in a moment. And another firm that was called Hagen Direct Marketing that was backed by Lake Capital. And they were still run by the original founder, whose last name was Hagen. And they had a vision of doing this roll up, and they ended up coming very close. Honestly, it was a flip. In some ways, it was a flip of a coin. Money-wise, it was basically a flip of the coin. They had a built-in way that they wanted to integrate us after merger. I remember him walking around our office saying, well, we have a gold team that does this and a green team that comes and does that. The red team comes and does finance. The blue team does human resources. We do this in the first 6 weeks. And then all of a sudden, I remember Jeff looking at me and going, geez, they really know how to run a firm. Why do they need us for it? Engauge was new and kind of didn't have those processes in place, which we thought was a good thing, and that we could be a part of it and be a voice in it. But also we knew in a way that Atlanta would be a division and we'd have a little bit more autonomy for growth. And as I think I said in the first Spuncast on this, we also got Ohio State season tickets out of it. So that helped.
Right. Yeah. Engauge had Columbus, Ohio, Austin, Texas, Orlando, and Hagen had Chicago, San Francisco.
Something in Seattle. And Lake was out of Chicago. I think Hagen was out of the Northwest. I remember the original website for Engauge was the Skylines, except Atlanta, Pittsburgh, Orlando, Austin, and Columbus are not known for their skylines. But anyway, that was, I digress.
Yeah. So the promise of Engauge was at that time 3 centers of excellence, right? We were going to be the digital center of excellence. There was an advertising center of excellence in Columbus, Ohio, and a direct marketing center of excellence in Austin, Texas. That was how it was pitched to us, right?
Yeah. And then also the vision of a legendary marketer in Stan Rapp, kind of tying it all together. And honestly, Stan was a big part of kind of the final decision as well.
Yeah. I feel like he was a special thing that came with that Hagen didn't have. Raj, what do you remember about the decision process there?
Yeah, I mean, kind of to Raghu's point, I think money was really, it was so close, right? And so a lot of it was, what could we truly influence instead of just being a cog in a system? I remember that was important. Also, would have a voice in really shaping what digital would be, much more, I think, on the Engauge side than the Hagen side. And so I remember us thinking that would be one good for us, because we felt we had great talent around that, and we were doing extremely well. I mean, that's why we were attractive. So that would be really good for our people, really good for us, but also going into a large organization that can open up the doors. If you remember back then, like, we were hitting up against RFPs, that we couldn't get past the bigger media side of things, the advertising side of things that needed to open up. So we thought, my gosh, these guys have those elements, and these other elements, and there seem to be a lot of different things. So this may be in a way to boost up from where we were going with existing retainers.
Oh, I forgot one point. Creative was something we did, but wasn't really our core specialty. And Engauge in video and some other stuff had some more ad-oriented creative. Hagen was more direct marketing. So I think, honestly, our creative was probably on par or maybe even better. So,
yeah. So as we were doing this, Danny, you stayed the shortest period of time. Do you remember, were you thinking, I'll stay for a short period of time, I'll see how it goes, and then I would like everyone to sort of answer that. Like, when we went into this, were you thinking we'd stay for the long term?
Yeah. I don't think any of us were ready to go the moment we did the transaction. Now, I might be speaking for you guys, but I kind of remember us at least wanting to see where this took us. And I think that feeds into what Roger and you remember about the decision making, that we thought we were going to lead the agency in digital. We knew they didn't have another digital shop really. And so we were going to be a bit of a standalone unit in Atlanta. At least we thought we would have more control over how to run the business. And I think we were interested in seeing how that would go. And I remember being interested in seeing how that would go. I mean, for me, and I think for all of us, maybe, it was our first acquisition like that, where we had to merge into another company. And I think we were maybe youthfully eager to experience that and see what it would be like to merge, a leadership team into another leadership team and join digital with traditional and all the stuff that looked like it was going to be a very fun challenge at the time of the transaction. So I think we were eager to participate in that. And then I remember distinctly having conversations at home about making sure we stayed on for at least a year, if not two, to experience that, but also to see where we headed as a company, to see if it was something that we wanted to stick around and be a part of. So definitely didn't have the day one jitters. It was intentional to stick around for a while and to experience both the merger and then see who we started to become as a result.
Same with you guys, Raj, Raghu?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was a booming economy. Everything was going good. We kept growing.
For like 2 more months.
Kind of felt like February 29th, 2020, where the world without oyster. But you never know what's in the near-term future. If you did, then you'd be a hedge fund or a private equity fund. You wouldn't be an agency. So to the extent that you can predict that. So we went into it not knowing what the future would hold, but we knew where digital was going. It was going to get bigger. We were going to have a bigger role in it. Traditional was going to become more digital. All those things were true, regardless of whatever happened with the economy for the next year or so, which we had no clue about. But we were in it to see what it could be. And honestly, we were also going to be shareholders in the new firm. So not only did we think it, we were sort of the pig and the chicken.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, for me, yeah, much like the rest of you, I don't think any of us intended to jump out anytime soon. So I think we all kind of jumped in and tried to understand things and learn from it and everything else. I do remember though, I think obviously the entire economy crashed, a couple of months later. We were actually doing, the Atlanta office at least was actually doing still fairly well, right, considering, but there was more turmoil in the rest of the organization that I don't think we truly anticipated, could ever even anticipate, and probably don't even truly grasp at the time of what was going on with certainly the direct business and the advertising business. They were getting clobbered. Jeff, I don't know if you want. Should I go into the sabbatical story real fast because that's kind of how it went out? Or
Let's talk because that's sort of at the end of year one or so. So let's just talk about how that first year went. I very much did not like that first year. I thought it was pretty terrible.
Oh, the first couple of months weren't bad at all.
well, I think it was
Yeah.
the first. I think it was there was pressure back into the business.
Yeah.
Right, to counter for.
Yeah.
That's
element as well. That I don't think we truly anticipated that level of pressure back into ours. And then, there was also, I'd say, like as the months went by, you got that pressure turned into almost hand holding, right? Which is, Jeff, probably what you hated the most, right?
It's one of the
Yeah,
things.
well, we had we had a unique situation, right? Like just like what we just seen with coronavirus, right? When the world goes crazy or there's a huge downturn, you really get to see the character of a leadership team. And what happened was we were really all of Engauge was a new leadership team. I mean, we were the last one to be acquired into that group. So you had a relatively new leadership team. It was young. It didn't have time to establish itself. And then bam, the economy fell out. And, the character of the overall leadership team started to come out because then it became a little bit of a finger pointing game about why aren't you where you say you should be and stuff like that. And I think that was very difficult for us.
Yeah, I think part of it was, why aren't you guys growing by 25% to make up
Right.
for other stuff shrinking by 50%? And in
Right.
reality, we were supposed to be one P&L. So obviously we wanted to contribute and grow. I would say, I guess I was still running ops and finance at the time. We did finish, I think, like a couple $100,000 more in revenue in 2018 than we did in 17. So we actually grew. But obviously not to the extent that we thought. But
2008 and 2007. But we were relatively flat, which was a good thing then. But the pressure was on us. And I do think all four of us had very different experiences because we were involved in different aspects. The thing that I actually dislike the most is really what Danny was talking about, because I would go to there would be these leadership meetings where I was chief digital officer. So it sort of meant I was supposed to be over that area of excellence for the company. And oh my gosh, the divisiveness, just the mistrust in those meetings, it was unbelievable. And there was, the CEO and the top leadership was mostly in the Columbus office. And there was always this slant of helping make sure that office didn't have to make changes. And so I just felt like, yes, Danny's right, that there was problems because of the economy, and it just shined a light on, I would just say, a complete lack of leadership.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because in the first year after a transaction, for those folks listening to this who usually aren't on that transaction side of the world, the first year has a special amount of pressure. When you sell, there's like usually they hold back like 10%, 15% or something for like an escrow. And then meanwhile, also, obviously you want to do the earnout, you want to make everything work. So there's some double pressure on minding your own store while also trying to integrate at the exact same time. So we were a little naive around that, but at some point during the year, we had to concentrate on that piece too, because it was such a big change. In some ways, it was a bigger change than what's going on right now with COVID. COVID's changed a lot of behaviors, and it's been a terrible economic shock in one way, but not on the investor side as much. Some of this stuff with the markets and things like that is not as disrupted. I'm not actually sure why, but the depth of the 08 one, you thought everything was going to fall apart in a different way than you do now.
Well,
I think it's important to note here that nothing in this video is meant to be investor advice on the state of the market or the economy. You should not make any trades based on anything you hear in this video.
Disclaimer.
Well, I'll say something. Follow the consumer, and go where they're going. It's going to work out. but yeah, as far as what the heck's going to happen, you know, in the next quarter or whatever, if you play the right game with the consumer, you'll be correct in the agency world, but you could be wrong for a few months.
Well, I mean, I want to touch. So, I mean, Jeff was exposed, you know, into the senior leadership. I think much more than us three, right? Maybe we're good a bit more, right? But certainly Danny and I less so, right? But I can tell you, like, take a step back for a minute. Like in previous episodes, we talked about, you know, why we were trying to, you know, look for a partner to sell into, right? Because we also knew our natural limitations and doing so. So I think a lot of the assumptions of selling into Engauge was like, well, these guys know what they're doing, right? They'll lead us through this stuff. And then what we end up finding is like, well, not really. No one knows what the hell they're doing. So that was probably a disappointment. And certainly much later on, even more so.
Yeah.
Hey, I tell you what, though, we learned a lot then that's helping the businesses we're running now
For sure.
run. So
Yeah.
I wish I didn't have to learn it on the fly, but yeah, in hindsight, I'm glad we learned a lot of lessons we learned about people, businesses, planning, how to deal with things, you know, because everybody's facing the same thing and it's how you deal with it. That's the big difference.
Yeah, in fairness, I do think, I mean, I certainly learned a ton from you know, the exposure we got out of that entire experience, right? So by no means am I saying like we were ready to like do the entire thing ourselves. We probably were not. So it was still the right advice from advisory board way back in the day, saying like, yeah, you guys are doing great, but you haven't seen the bigger game yet.
Yeah.
So, you know, like it or not, the Engauge stuff showed us a bigger game, not the biggest game, but a bigger game. And that taught us a lot into our future roles and stuff. So, yeah, painful as it may be, it was probably like really good lessons for us and good exposure in a lot of places.
I could have learned it a little faster in a little bit better way, probably. That's just me.
Maybe less painful. So Jeff, would you think, going back, do you think I feel like it might have been a good idea if we had kept the four of us maybe in a tighter communication
100%.
circle,
Yeah.
maybe for the first year or so. And we didn't intentionally do that, but
Yeah.
I think there was, when you have a new leadership team and you're joining another leadership team, there's so much communication that happens from so many different directions, and you have people coming directly to you and you have no idea what's happening in other conversations, and the four of us might get the same message in three different ways. And I feel like we could have done a better job of maybe having, whether it was weekly or just something very routine, where we got together and did nothing but talk about what are we hearing, what are we trying to do, how are we interpreting what the leadership team's telling us to do, things like that. I think might have helped.
Yeah, I would say that I'm going to put most of the fact that didn't happen on me, because if I look back at that first call at 9 months, the rest of 2008, I think of like, have you ever seen when a dolphin gets put in captivity and then its dorsal fin or whatever folds over, and it's like it's just
no,
like
no, I don't capture a lot of dolphins. I don't capture as many as you do.
It's mahi when it's on your plate, Dan.
Right. I definitely, like Raj was saying, like I was really excited to have leadership that I felt like I could learn from, and then so quickly was disenfranchised by that, the way they were treating us, the way they talked about each other, just the whole thing. I'm glad we did what we did, but it was like, I felt like I had made a mistake, and I felt I was down. And so I probably lost sight of the fact that A, we should have definitely been staying more in touch, and B, you guys probably could have helped me through a lot of that. Cause I was attending the board meetings and the strategic meetings, and it was like, it was pretty bad. But Danny, I want to make sure I get timing right. When did you leave again?
2010, so 2 years after. It was like the middle of the year, I think June-ish.
Yeah. So let's talk about that first year. I just sort of shared how I was feeling. Talk me through how the three of you were feeling, and then we'll get to Raj's sabbatical and the change that happened from that.
I'll kick it off. It was interesting because my last 6 months at Spun was super consumed with finance ops, the deal. Just Jeff and I both, but like maybe me a little bit more during Jeff and I equally for the roadshow and all the investment banker stuff, but mostly me for like due diligence and stuff post LOI, just area of expertise wise. And I came out of that and I said, I do not want to run ops in finance. I want to do something completely different. So as I was
we all
around,
wanted that. That's okay.
Yeah, I got approached by the executive creative director. He was like, "Hey, I heard you also have a strong technical bent and digital, et cetera. That, and I'm like, yeah, sure. Let's hit it together. Let's go on pitches together. Let's try to get creative and technology working together in kind of like a modern way for traditional and digital and all that." It was just new. And I think part of the reason the four of us sort of each weren't talking as much is literally we were talking every day for like 7 years, and here's a little chance to like not talk to each other every day, after 7 years of that. So, I kind of went that way on the creative and technology side. Jeff, kind of leveled up on some of the board meetings. Occasionally I'd sit on the board meetings, but it was most of the time it was Jeff. And it was very different. So I was pretty excited for a while. Started seeing some of the things of like, how do we pitch and talk about ourselves? And I was like, wow, digital seems not to be being emphasized so much, but I thought that would turn around a little bit faster. So there was some frustration in the first year that we had some cool pitch opportunities, but I didn't think like the digital side was being really represented or, a part of it as much. One time we went to pitch a large soft drink company. I forget the name of that large soft drink company based in Atlanta. We went to pitch and they brought all these big physical foam boards that were like 6 foot tall by like 4 foot wide and had all this Velcro. I'm like, oh yeah, why don't we make slides out of that? and they said, you don't know anything about pitching. Foam boards, slapping things around. Here's an email, foam board. And I'm like, wow, I guess they know what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. So you brought up something I did want to point out too. I'm not proud of this, but I got so sort of not into it that I started making up some excuses not to attend board meetings. I'd like schedule a client meeting somewhere and I'd have Ragu go in my place because I was like, I can't deal with it. And I loved Halyard. Like, we should be clear. There's some awesome people that were at Engauge for sure. And I really liked our private equity group, Halyard. I thought they were terrific, but there was just some things that weren't working with some of the leaders. And so
Jeff kept having kids and making me go to the board meeting.
Hey,
anything
to get out.
If you were disenfranchised, that actually helped you have 3 children in pretty short order. So,
all right, Danny, what about you? That first year, what was it like? Were you mostly sort of untouched by it, running the tech accounts you were running, or did you feel it? What are your thoughts?
Oh, I think for sure I might have been the most protected from the politics that you were involved in attending the board meetings. I flash back to, I remember the pressure. Like, I remember being very frustrated that we were performing pretty well given the economy, and that there seemed to be a ridiculous amount of pressure on us to do even more. And there was some disenfranchisement because it seemed a little unrealistic and not taking into account the times, even though we were still performing, I believe, better than any other department. So I remember being disenfranchised by that. I remember conversations with you guys about how things were going on the front lines and that also weighing into our decisions. But overall, I think, to your point, our response to the pressure was when you guys were working on the sale and Raj and I were working on trying to keep the business going and the main accounts going, that just continued after the sale because, as Raghu had mentioned, we did have some earn-out stuff we wanted to make sure we hit. We wanted to make sure things went well. And so let's focus highly on that. But I think we had some immediate moments of disenfranchisement across the board. All of us did, whether it was individual moments or as a group with the leadership team we were joining and the decisions they were making. And it became very clear that position of leading the company towards being digital was not going to happen anytime soon. It became more of a backseat thing for a while. And I think that was disappointing for all of us. So There was some HR and personnel issues. I remember distinctly that, you know, since we inherited a more traditional marketing company's employee package, like benefit package and stuff, that it immediately clashed with what we expected as a digital shop with maybe even a younger staff. So there were some interesting things that collided really quickly. So overall, I mean, I think we were a little disenfranchised, but I was protected from some of the stuff that you were dealing with for sure.
Right. And Raj, what was that first 9 or so months like for you?
Yeah, I think it started off okay, trying to figure out things. But then it kind of to Danny's point, things got very disfranchised. And I actually found myself almost not having a home in a sense, right? Within the group. I remember like even towards the end of the year, 2008, I guess, right? Like literally almost like, what the hell should I be doing now, right? Because I stopped running accounts, I stopped, on the creative side and all that kind of stuff. And I was literally like, we were finding things for me to do. Right?
Problems for you to solve.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Oh, let's set up search. Like, okay, I know everything about search, nothing at all. So, I mean, that actually was interesting at the time. Like, go off and figure out creating search marketing and display and so forth. But it was so like isolated. So I did feel very isolated, which kind of led me to like, okay, I need to probably go do something else, right? So that was, by the end of the year, which is probably month 8 or 9, I had made that decision like, okay, I don't think I have a home here anymore. So I felt disconnected completely.
Well,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think one of the things you made me think about that also helped us get a little disenfranchised is we went from literally seeing everything that happened in the company, seeing all the financials, being a part of all the decisions, to all of a sudden, and this is not like this is bad, but this is what happens, to a lot of that happening at a different level. So it was happening at the board level, Jeff, that you were a part of, but the 3 of us at least were no longer a part of a lot of that, and we were more getting handed down the orders from what the board was deciding. And I think that fed into that a little bit, that feeling of isolation for all of us, because we used to all 4 be huddled up looking all this together, and all of a sudden we were in our own territory, just hearing what was happening instead of being a part of it. Yeah. Sorry, Raj.
For me, I'd say a little differently. Just I was traveling to the other offices pretty regularly, so it was just sort of, I didn't feel disenfranchised, frustrated occasionally that change couldn't happen better for sure, but not disenfranchised because I was in the room when we were saying, hey, how do we do this pitch? Or I got to know the CFO fairly well, at least, happy hour kind of knowing somebody kind of thing. So I knew everybody. I was in maybe a quarter of the board meetings, whenever Jeff had a kid or something. Had
a kid or had enough.
Yeah. And because Jeff and I had gotten to know the PE guys through the roadshow. So I wouldn't say disenfranchised or I didn't know, but at the same time, we wanted to make change happen faster, better, more agnostic to a particular office. And that wasn't happening as fast because stuff was crumbling economy-wise, but we needed to be more focused as a company about how to react to it. And I don't think we were. Yeah. And I was seeing all the numbers, which it wasn't fun to see those numbers because, come the fall of 2008.
In a lot of cases, like we kind of knew it was going. Like I think Jeff and Raghu definitely knew the numbers, but to Danny's point, like I think we stopped being involved in those things. So later on, it was like, okay, well, I'm not really connected here anymore. And then I had a new boss as well, right? Then I was like, okay, well, this is not even what I do. What am I doing here? So I'll quickly go into like I ended up like saying, okay, I want to be done, but let's figure out a timeline, and I wanted to go off traveling, right? And I will say that I want one of the key leaders over on the Columbus side of things, not the CEO, I'll say that, but he actually was like, listen, go take the time off. Let's call this a sabbatical, right? I'm like, all right, I don't care what we call it. Sure, I'll take a sabbatical, right? And so we arranged a 2-month transition of what I was doing to then go off and take a sabbatical. So I left in March 2009, February, March 2009. So I hadn't even been there a year after the acquisition. And I had zero intentions of really coming back because I was like, I'm not too sure what I'm going to be doing here.
Well,
How
also
long-
part of it budget-wise, it wasn't like we were looking to like have more costs too. So I think looking back, probably making some changes in management or things that eventually happened probably should have happened faster then, but that's a bit of hindsight.
Raj, how long were you gone?
I was gone for just on, I guess, 4.5, 5 months. 5 months, I think. Came back in July.
How many countries did you visit?
Oh, a lot. Gosh, I can't remember. Like probably about 18 or so. It was a good trip. It was a good trip. That was the first time I disconnected from you guys for a long time.
It seemed like a long time back then.
Have all three of you
Yeah.
taken sabbatical type times? Not necessarily on the job, but like in between jobs or,
Yeah,
Yeah, I took-
I did. I did later
Yeah.
in life. Yeah.
I'm the only one. I've never not been.
Yeah,
You went to Scotland
That's it.
for a month.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did do that. Yeah, but I worked. I wrote a book the whole time.
That's your problem.
that is your
No, it
fault.
is. I'm trying to figure out when you guys discussed this strategy that I missed out on. Okay, so Raj, when you got back, that was when the new job offer was presented to you, right?
Well, what happened? I literally landed. I remember it was a Sunday. I don't even know, like you guys, like, especially Jeff called me, because the first time I'm turning on my cell phone again. Right? I was like, how the hell did you know I'm back? I just got back and everything else. And that's, literally the day I arrived back is the day Jeff calls and say, hey, what are you thinking of doing? I'm like, no idea. Yeah, and then obviously you started talking about, well, there's some stuff here. Do you want to come back and do something in the interim? And it was literally meant to be, you remember, Jeff, it was just meant to come in the interim as we went off to hire a new managing director, because you were going to move into something else. And I was literally going to just come in just to hold that as you guys hired someone. It wasn't coming back.
I didn't remember that. I wonder if it was it wasn't on my part, but I wonder if it was a test just to say, well, let's see how he does before he really commit, because I don't remember us going through a search. But what happened while you were gone is I had enough, and I I basically said, look, I'm not interested in dealing with all this anymore. I'm either going to leave, or I think this was early 2009, and I was like, let me have one employee and start an innovation group, and let me just see what I can do with it over the next year. And I knew that would get me out of all the BS that I was dealing with. I almost needed to start something again. And so I grabbed Josh Martin out of research, and together we started the Dig group, which ultimately became mostly social. But that was my way of staying. But also contributing, because like you, I was sort of like, I need something to contribute if I'm going to do that. So then you took the job and you never let go of it.
Yeah, I was surprised with that either. To be honest, I never thought I wanted to do the job. And I remember a lot of it was really just, it was jumping back. I hadn't. Raghu, if you remember, was always the one who was heavy in the finances, right? And so this was a lot of my first exposure jumping into that. So,
after I made sure we passed through the escrow and everything fine, you could have at it.
Right.
But was that 18 months? Was it an 18-month?
12.
It was 12.
Yeah, they offered 18. I think we negotiated it to 12. And then we helped out, with the escrow, but at it was our decision too. So we went through all that clean.
Yeah.
But I did in the background. I kept a lot of finance stuff up until around that 1 year mark, At which point after that, it was casual conversations with CFO, but I wasn't responsible anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I literally went into it just as a temporary thing, right? That was my mindset on it, but I enjoyed it. It was something different and new for me, and so yeah, in the end, I did end up staying, but that wasn't the intention. It was to hold it for 3 months, literally, you know. I don't know, at the board level, maybe they're saying like, let's test him out, but that was my intention. My intention was just, hold it while you find someone.
Well, it wasn't too long after that, Danny, that you were like, I've had enough.
Yeah.
Was it because of
Yeah.
Raj?
It's probably because of me.
Because of Raj. As soon as Raj came back, I was like, well, it's time for me to go.
Now
No,
everything.
I don't remember. I think after about a year is when I decided that it wasn't going the way we wanted. I think it had a lot to do with the fact that what Raghu and Roger talked about, that we wanted the company to invest more in digital faster than we were doing. And we believed that there was a lot of untapped potential, and it was just frustrating. There was a lot of things we couldn't control and change as quickly as we wanted to. And I think at that point, about a year in actually, is when I decided, okay, I've did my year. I've seen what's going on. It's not going in the direction that we're really excited about. So then I just started tinkering with different ideas for what I'd want to do next, really for the next year. And then I think about 9 months in is when I decided it was time to go, and had conversations with you guys about leaving. And then we worked about a 3-month transition or something like that until I finally left in June. So, and I remember it was kind of funny. I remember there being a discussion about me leaving, and that the leadership team, not you guys, were so worried about me taking people with me, but they didn't want me to announce that I was leaving, and they wanted me to just disappear. I don't know if you remember that, but they were like, so then we just worked out a thing where I just started showing up less and less at the office, and then I just stopped coming in, but never told anybody I left for a while. And so it was just this weirdest thing.
That's
where
what
all of a
happened
sudden
with
my desk
Raj.
was
Next
empty.
thing you know, he was in Asia.
Yeah, I know. So it was like this intentional slip out the back door thing, just as part of the severance package or whatever. I think we worked out to leave, but it was just like, hey, we want you to leave quietly. So I said, okay, well, I'll leave quietly. That was what I remember. I think probably my moment was, yours was faster when it came to the leadership team. Mine was later, but then it was maybe sooner than Raghu or some guys went through, and I just started tinkering with what I would do next. So.
Yeah. And then the big change that happened was, I would say after year 2, at least for me, the innovation group had grown. Maybe we had 15 or so people, and we were, it was ready that I didn't have to run it anymore. We were doing a lot of interesting things there. And I basically had decided that for me anyway to stay, there needed to be changes at the top from a leadership perspective. I had gotten to the point where I just felt like that I couldn't. I mean, the stories that I could tell, that some of you could tell, I won't. But unbelievable things I saw and heard and experienced, and I just said I can't be here with that. So I approached Halyard and just talked about a different way we could go if they wanted me to be a part of it. They did most of what I had asked. And so there was a sea change at the top. And I feel like I think of that as like Engauge 2.0, where we started, I think Steve Swanson said, let's have a no assholes policy, which is nothing we ever had to do at Spun before, because we never would hire or tolerate that. But we had to do it at Engauge, and we made some changes, and then suddenly the culture started to get better. So for Raghu and Raj, did you feel a difference after we made those changes and started doing things differently? Did it feel different? I know we started winning more and started to have more growth, but like, do you think of it like I do as sort of a 1.0 and a 2.0, or did it just all feel the same?
Yeah, it's weird though, because simultaneously, I guess we were talking about 2010 to 2011. I forget exactly when that happened. I know collectively the company suddenly said, "Oh yeah, this digital thing's pretty important." So I didn't have to fight that fight as far as positioning and stuff on pitches. And the economy got better, and we got a more focused new business department. And all those things happened roughly around then. So suddenly it was beginning to be pretty exciting because we were knocking on some pretty big doors. Sometimes Jeff and I, sometimes Dave up in Columbus and I. So that got more exciting. I can't connect all of them to the sea change, even though that was a big part of it as well. It's just a lot of things changed at the same time where, ultimately all the changes were the cause and none of the changes were not needed. But there was a few different things that happened at the same time. And maybe if we had never had the economy crash, maybe everybody would have gotten along in 2008. I don't know. But
I think that the big change was, certainly the C-level changes were the driving force around it, but it was when we finally committed to becoming a company, right, versus 3 different companies trying to pretend to be a company, right? Yeah. That was the problem all the way through, right? And in 2018, that's right, 2008 and 2009 is that we were pretending to be a company, but really we're 3 different companies, one trying to protect against the other and throwing shit across the board, right? When we truly broke down all 3 companies and rebuilt it up, right? That's when we actually became a company and started figuring out shit. Yeah, that was the change, I think.
Yeah, and then winning is self-fulfilling when when you kind of get a win or 2 and then you're like, oh, that's the formula we use to win. Let's do that again.
But see, those 2 things you guys just said, aligning and becoming one company and winning, were never going to happen without the changes. They were just never going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, those sound like top-down type directives anyway. Yeah. I mean, at least the one company is the top-down directive.
The C-level change fueled, okay, now we've got to, in order to even survive, we need to do this. As painful as and as complicated as some of those things were, right? Combining things, getting rid of things, recreating new narratives, new systems and processes and all that kind of stuff. Those were needed to I think at this point, I don't think the old leadership would have ever got there.
Yeah. That said, I don't want somebody to think that just because they're winning, everything's working, because sometimes, the economy is so good you can't help but win. Yeah. But we were not going to win in a down economy by not being cohesive. And I wouldn't say the economy was booming in 2010, 2011, like it was maybe another year or so later. So we earned it. We earned those wins and we wouldn't have gotten them. But, it isn't important for somebody learning how to be a leader. Just because you're winning doesn't mean you're doing it right. So when we finally were winning, we were doing it right and we earned it. But if the economy was great early on, we probably would have been winning even if we weren't integrated.
It would have masked a lot of the problems for sure.
Yeah.
But when we made the big change, one of the call it in the middle of Engauge, I also took over business development, which is probably a big reason we started pitching and going after digital a lot more than we had before. The person we had in there before was fine, but definitely not digitally oriented. So a lot of things coalesced into that point. One of my questions for you guys is, we talked about the Spunlogic culture. And I always felt like we had a pretty strong culture, mostly because we just really wanted people to be happy working at our company. I guess mainly for Raj and Raghu, because you guys were there the whole time. Do you think toward the end of Engauge, we got close to the culture we had at Spunlogic? Did we never quite get there? We had amazing people. I mean, we continue to get such great people throughout. I mean, the people are all across the city now doing amazing things. So we benefited from that. But culture-wise, do you think that we got back to that point or never quite got there?
I think we made a lot of strides. I don't think we got quite to the Spun culture, right? But I do think towards the end, we finally figured out our identity, and there was, there was a pride in working for that agency, which was a huge, huge monumental like shift from the silos that it was to then like, okay, we're coming together, but no one really understands what the hell this is, to like, how do we even say our name, to shit like that, right? And towards the end, we finally did have, we knew what we were doing, we knew what we were good at, and people were proud to be at that agency, but I don't think it got quite to the stage of Spun, right, where it was truly family, in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was different. I think one of the things by going into social, because it was so new, suddenly the experts at social were suddenly like 5-10 years younger than everybody else. And we had a big infusion of energy and youthfulness, but also knowledge. And a lot of times agencies, you live off the back of young people coming in with energy, because there's a lot of, go do an audit on this, go do this, go help put this together, put that together. But our youth was coming in also being smarter than people older than them, because they were natively social or were just coming out when all those networks were new. So we had a huge amount of like energy and smarts in young people. So suddenly we started pulling them into pitches and helping put together important things or talking directly with clients. There's no way we would have done that with normal web stuff. Your PM would have been 30 instead of like 24, because like, hey, you wanted everybody with knowledge. And we had this big wave of people come in, they brought in their friends as well. And that really shot a lot of stuff in, because the culture wasn't, hey, be like Jeff, Raghu, and Raj. We were part of the culture, but we weren't purely leading it. We were helping it, stay positive and everything. But there was an infusion of different kinds of talent and different things. And I think that helped a lot. Yeah. And that was a part of it. They were just as much of a part of the culture as we were. Collectively, it got a lot better, and there was a ton of energy in the office. And without the company saying our culture is this and tweeting about it and posting about it, our employees would naturally tweet about it and post about it. And everybody in town would start seeing, wow, what's Engauge doing? I want to work there. And it just fed on itself. And I think that I'd like to give a lot of the props to the people that came in and the energy that they brought in as well.
Yeah, Jeff, I'd say one other thing that kind of helped get us close back to the Spun, like the office change that we made was a huge impact. It gave like, okay, this is a fresh new beginning kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right?
That was 2010, Rod, late 2010.
That was late 2011, I think.
Yeah, we went under lease, but I think we moved in at the beginning of 2011.
Yeah, that after that, I felt like, oh my gosh, now we feel like a real, agency, and I think it energized a lot of the staff.
But we had the nicest office in town.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, from just attracting talent, and the younger talent that we're bringing in, and everything else, and then we did started, creating those, cool cultural moments. I mean, the beer 33s and all that kind of random stuff, and people were having fun in the office.
That was every Friday at 3:33. Was it Friday?
Yeah, Fridays at 3:33. Yeah.
Somebody would two people would dress up and theme, and they'd take the beer cart around the office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our last one we did, if you guys remember, was with the ice luge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you remember correctly, Rod.
Take it back to Spun with the ice luge.
Yeah. Hey, Rod, if you remember that last one, I think Nick was on a plane coming down from Columbus to Atlanta to participate. He landed and found out that there was something that was holding up the contract for another day or two. So he just stayed at the airport and flew back to Columbus, but we had already ordered the ice luge to tell everybody that the deal was final. So the deal wasn't final, but we still had the ice luge, and it was going to melt unless we used it. And all of us went around and like poured out the shots to everybody, but it
you're
didn't
talking
close
about
for a couple more days.
the deal to sell.
Yeah, to purposes. Yeah. Also like those are like even just the little things. Like I remember like Yeah, screw it. I'm just going to spend the money because they're going to not know for shit afterwards.
Stuck Moxie with the bill. All right. Well, I want to do a part 2 to this where we'll talk about the acquisition process. And then Danny, I'll bow out of the conversation and let those two talk for a little bit about the integration with Moxie, because I think I was the only Engauge employee that didn't go forward. So I was never a Moxie employee. But I want to talk more about that, but we need more time for it. I will say one thing. There were 2 reasons why I don't think the culture could ever have gotten to what we had at Spun those last couple of years. One, least important of the 2, but one was because we stopped doing cruises. It was a promise that was made by the leadership that never happened. But then 2, because Danny wasn't there. And I think, as we built Spunlogic, it was the 4 of us. But my goodness, the impact, Danny, that you had on the culture was tremendous. And so I think one of the things.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. And over those couple of years too, where you were at Engauge, you did try to find ways to bring the fun back. You did some of your pranks. And that was always appreciated. So I think I'm proud of what we were able to turn around and build. I don't know that it ever got to what Spun was, but I think we can be proud of where
it was something good but different.
Yeah.
I was proud of it, but it was still good.
I think there's a lot of people that really enjoyed it. I remember hearing sometimes people talk about being so excited, or even reflecting back on the days they were at Engauge and loving the culture. And I just remember thinking, really? Oh, all right. Well, I guess maybe it did get better.
Hey, one thing I would say, there was a lot more good talent at Engauge at the end, at least in Atlanta, than we wish we could have had all that talent at the end of Spun. We had some of the talent at the end of Spun stuck through it all the way through Engauge, and they were a part of that great talent pool. But we really picked up the level of talent continually over time.
Yep.
Yeah, we were super fortunate with that. All right, boys. I appreciate you doing this again. I'll see you on the next episode.
All right.
All right. Great talking to you guys.
See you guys.
Take care.
Yes, he left.
Every time.
I think he's doing it on purpose now.
So
Gotta be doing it on purpose.
The joke is that every time we finish this, Raghu turns it off.
Yeah.
Hey, why do you leave?